I'm Elijah Moore. He didn't even look up from his clipboard. Name? I blinked. Elijah Moore. His eyes dragged up, slow, uninterested. Right. I sat down across from him, adjusting my blazer. My palms were already slick. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. I knew what to say, how to say it. But I didn't prepare for this kind of silence. He stared at the paper again. Valedictorian, huh? Yes, sir. Class of 24, he nodded barely. National debate champion. Impressive. Thank you. I smiled, hoping for a flicker of humanity. Instead, he gave a dry chuckle. Didn't expect someone like... You applying here? I froze. Someone like me? He shrugged, casual. You just don't look like Harvard material. My heart thudded slow and heavy. I straightened my spine. You mean because I'm black? He smirked. I didn't say that, but I heard it, felt it. The same way you feel when you walk into a store and they follow you. The same way teachers used to say articulate like it was a surprise. I kept my voice even. Well, I've got a 4.2 GPA, 12 AP classes, and perfect SUT scores. He scribbled something. I've also published 2 research papers on sociolinguists and led 3 student-led policy initiatives. Must be a diversity push this year, he muttered. My throat tightened. I wanted to walk out. But I didn't. I needed this. Or maybe Harvard is looking for the best. I said steady. His pen paused mid-stroke. I kept going. Maybe they want leaders who don't come from privilege but still rise, who understand struggle and still choose purpose. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. Something flickered there. Annoyance. Maybe respect. I couldn't tell. He leaned back in his chair. Tell me, Elijah, what makes you think you'll survive Harvard? I leaned forward. Because I've survived every room where I wasn't wanted, every teacher who expected less, every peer who assumed I cheated my way in. I don't just survive, Mr. Reynolds. I perform and I lead. His mouth twitched. Confident. Prepared, I corrected. A pause stretched between us, thick with unspoken things. He broke it with a sigh. Well, we'll see what the committee thinks. I stood up. I already know what I think, he raised an eyebrow. And what's that? That no matter what this committee decides, I walked in here today already worthy. I didn't wait for his response, as I stepped out into the hallway. The silence behind me was louder than applause. I sat in the guidance office, arms crossed, eyes flicking to the ceiling as I waited. The smell of stale coffee and old carpet made my stomach turn. Ms. Bennett finally looked up from her computer, her brow already furrowed. You said you needed to talk? She asked. I took a breath. Yeah, I got flagged. She blinked. Flagged? Rejected. From pre-approval. My voice was flat. They said my interview went poorly. She frowned and turned to her screen, clicking through a few windows before landing on something. Her mouth twisted as she read, Applicant lacks maturity, unclear academic goals, defensive. She glanced up. That doesn't sound like... You... defensive? I repeated, my voice rising. Defensive? Because I spoke up? Because I answered questions while black? Her lips parted, but she didn't speak right away. I wasn't rude, I went on. I was prepared. I told them exactly what I wanted to study. They looked at me like I was speaking another language. She tapped her pen against the desk, face tight. Let me call them. I nodded, even though I already knew it wouldn't change anything. She dialed. I listened. Hi, this is Ms. Bennett from Central High. I'm calling about a student. Jaden, yes. For the scholarship pre-approval? I just reviewed the feedback, and it seems inconsistent with his academic record. A pause. No, I understand the interview is a factor, but his GPA is over 3.8, and he's captain of 2 clubs? His teachers speak highly of him. Another pause. I could hear the politeness draining from her voice. Okay, I appreciate your time. Click. She hung up slowly. Her eyes met mine. They stood by the evaluation? Of course they did, I gave. A short laugh, dry and bitter. Guess I was too confident for a black nobody. Her face softened. That's not what they said. They didn't have to, I replied. They said it with their tone, with their eyes. With that damn checklist. She sighed, leaning back. You shouldn't have to carry this, but I do. I stood. I carry it into every room before I even open my mouth. That night at dinner, I pushed my food around my plate while my mom watched in silence. I hadn't said anything yet, but she knew. She always knew. They flagged me, I said finally. Said I was defensive. She didn't flinch. Just picked up her glass of water and took a sip. I answered every question, I muttered. Better than they probably expected, and it didn't matter. Still, she said nothing. I looked up. Her eyes met mine. Fight with your words, she said softly. That's your weapon. I wanted to believe that. I tried, I said. And look where it got me. She reached across the table, touched my hand. That was round one. You don't lose a fight in round one. Her grip was firm. I nodded slowly, but it still hurt because deep down I wasn't sure if they'd ever stop judging my fight before it even began. The email came in just after midnight. No name, no subject line beyond urgent Harvard interviews. Watch this one, I almost didn't click it. I wish I hadn't, but I did. There I was sitting stiffly across from Mr. Reynolds. The Harvard interviewer, looking nervous but polite. Then the camera angle shifted. The interview was over. But the recording kept rolling off screen. A voice. His voice. He'll pull the race card the second he's challenged. Laughter. Another man. I don't want someone like that on campus. Someone like that. I couldn't breathe. My face burned, not from shame, but from a heat I couldn't explain, like all the oxygen had turned to fire inside me. I sat there in my room, staring at my screen. Over and over again, he'll pull the race card. Someone like that. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just watched myself get judged, erased. Laughed at an hour passed. 2. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I called the Harvard admissions office. My fingers were trembling, but my voice stayed steady. Harvard admissions. A woman answered. I need to report something, I said. A pause. What kind of report? I cleared my throat. Discrimination. From an interviewer. I have a recording. She cut me off. Where did you get this recording? It was sent to me anonymously. It includes audio after the interview. He says, my voice cracked. He says I'll pull the race card. Then someone else says they don't want someone like me on campus. Another pause. Longer this time. We'll look into it. That's it? I asked. Yes, click. I stared at my phone. Not even a name. Not even a goodbye. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the video. Not even the words. It was the coldness. The dismissal. Like I was a number calling to complain about a vending machine. At dinner, I'd barely touched my food. My mom didn't ask anything. She just passed me the rice and sat quiet. Then she said softly, You okay? I shook my head. She didn't push. She waited. She always did. So I told her. I told her everything. The email, the voices, the laugh, the silence on the phone. When I finished, she didn't speak for a long time. Her eyes were still on her plate, but I knew she was somewhere else, some memory I'd never know. Finally, she looked up at me. You don't fight fire with fire, she said. You fight with your words? That's your weapon? What if they're not listening? I whispered, They are. She nodded once. Even if they pretend not to, every word you speak stays. It echoes, even in rooms you'll never walk into. My throat tightened. I just wanted to be good enough, I said. You are, she replied, like it was fact. But being good doesn't always protect you. That's why you speak. Loud and clear, I went to bed that night holding her words like armor. But inside, something cracked. And for the first time, I didn't want to be silent anymore. My phone rang just past 7 p.m. I stared at the screen, unknown number. My chest tightened. Hello? Is this Elijah Matthews? Yes, who's calling? This is Dr. Lenore Banks, Dean of Admissions at Harvard. I stood up, gripping the edge of my desk like it might stop the floor from giving out beneath me. Yes, hi. I listened to the recording, she said, her voice steady but warm. First, I want to say I'm sorry. No one should ever hear what you did. And second, that man does not speak for this institution. For a moment, I couldn't respond, my throat locked. My knees almost gave. I've been holding my breath since that email, I said softly. I understand. Do you? I didn't mean for the words to come out like that. Sharp, almost bitter. But they did, because I was ready to give up. I thought the door was closed, locked, and burned behind me. There was a pause. You're right to be angry. Why was I flagged? My voice cracked. Why was my application even in the hands of someone like him? Internal sabotage, she said plainly. We're still identifying the full scope, but let me be clear, this is not being ignored. I sank into my chair, finally allowing myself to breathe. So does that mean I still have a chance? She didn't hesitate. Elijah, you're not just in consideration. You're at the top of our list. I blinked. Wait, what? You've earned it, despite everything. I swallowed hard. Then why did it take a leak to get someone to act? Why did I have to be humiliated first? Another silence. Heavier this time. I wish I had a better answer, she said. Sometimes systems don't react until they're forced to see themselves. That doesn't make it right. I leaned forward, my voice low. I don't want this hidden. I know, I mean it, I said. I don't want it swept under some committee rug. I don't want him to quietly resign in 6 months with a smile and a handshake. I want the truth seen. I want people to know what I almost lost just because of the color of my skin. Her voice came quieter. Neither do I? The room felt still, like the air was holding its breath with me. Thank you for calling, I whispered. You deserve more than a call, but this is the beginning. We're not done yet. And for the first time in days, I believed that the panel room felt cold, not from the air, but from the weight of what was about to unfold. I sat at the end of a long, polished table. Across from me, Mr. Reynolds, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Dean Banks sat in the center of the panel, her expression unreadable but firm. She nodded. Mr. Elijah Carter, you may speak. I stood. Slowly, my palms were damp. My voice, steady, but my chest thudded like a warning drum. I wasn't upset because I was questioned. I began locking eyes with the faces in front of me. I was upset because I wasn't seen. Reynolds let out a sharp breath. This is a witch hunt. Dean Banks lifted her hand without even looking at him. Let him finish. I sat in that interview room, I said, turning my full attention to Reynolds. Prepared, qualified, overprepared, honestly. I knew I'd be under extra scrutiny. I've lived with that since I was 10, his jaw clenched. I saw the twitch, and instead of a fair shot, I got a smirk. I got a question that wasn't about my work, my research, or my goals. I got a comment about the way I speak, like my presence offended your expectations. It was just a comment, he blurted. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. You didn't see my grades. You didn't see my volunteer hours, my letters of recommendation. You didn't see my late nights, my sacrifices. You only saw my skin. Silence blanketed the room. Thick, heavy. My breathing slowed. But inside, everything still churned. Reynolds looked around, searching for backup. Look, I didn't mean anything by it. I was making an observation. This whole thing is getting twisted. Dean Banks leaned forward. You mocked an applicant's identity. That is not an observation. That is disqualifying. He opened his mouth. Closed it, you assumed, I said, more quietly now. You assumed I didn't belong before I ever opened my mouth. And that assumption has a cost, not just for me, but for every student who comes after. Reynolds muttered, so now I'm a racist, huh? I didn't say that, I replied, but your actions, they spoke loud. Another panelist, a quiet man in a gray tie, finally spoke. Mr. Reynolds, this recording your words were dismissive. At best, harmful at worst. I was under pressure, Reynolds defended. We had quotas, deadlines. Dean Banks cut in. You had bias, and you let it guide your judgment. That's unacceptable in an admissions officer. My knees wanted to buckle, but I stayed standing. I had to. This isn't just about me, I said, my voice lower now but resolute. It's about every kid who walks in thinking their future depends on being twice as good and still not being enough. Dean Banks met my eyes. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I sat down slowly. Reynolds looked like a balloon about to burst. Red, puffed, deflating by the second. I think we've heard enough. Dean Banks said, I don't remember leaving the room. Only that when I stepped outside into the hallway, I could finally breathe again. I opened my inbox and saw his name. Subject, I hope you're proud. I didn't even need to read the rest. But I did. You ruined a man's life. I exhaled slowly. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heart didn't race like it used to. No panic. Just a hollow clarity. I typed, no, you did that. And I hit send. By noon, the forums were chaos. Screenshots of the hearing transcript were everywhere. Someone had titled the thread, "He said what?" And the comments were brutal. So how many students never made it past his desk? He was gatekeeping the gates of Harvard. You can tell from his tone. That wasn't a slip-up, that was belief. I scrolled in silence. My name wasn't mentioned directly, most didn't know me. But they knew enough. And that was enough. Did. You see this? Layla burst into the study lounge, holding up her phone. I looked up. Yeah, they're calling for a full audit of the alumni board, like everything he touched. This is huge. I nodded. It should be. She sat across from me. You. Okay, I wanted to say yes, but I paused. I think I'm breathing for the first time in months. By evening, the official statement came in. Mr. Reynolds has resigned from his position on the alumni board. Effective immediately. No apology, no ownership. Just disappearance. Dean Banks forwarded it to me with a single sentence. You spoke. They heard. I stared at the words. Not because they were profound, but because for once the system didn't swallow the story whole. Later that night, I called my mom. He quit, I said softly. A pause. He should have, but I know that doesn't undo what he did. No, but it changes the air in the room. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm proud of you. I bit my lip. Thanks, Mama. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. Maybe. Another ping. A classmate I barely knew messaged me privately. I never said anything, but I heard what he said to you that day. I should have spoken up. I'm sorry. I stared at the message. I replied, thank you for telling me now. People were watching now. Listening, maybe. That mattered. I shut my laptop and leaned back in my chair. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It held weight. It echoed with everything unsaid, everything still coming. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just refuses to be quiet. The auditorium buzzed with energy, but my hands trembled as I held the edges of the program. I could barely read my name on the print. Elijah Moore, valedictorian. Her principal's voice echoed. This year's valedictorian, Elijah Moore, has been accepted to Harvard University. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, some gasps. A few stunned silences. I stood, legs stiff, heart pounding. I walked to the podium. The lights blinded me, but I found my mom in the front row. Her eyes were already glossy. She nodded, silently telling me, speak your truth. I took a breath. I was told I didn't look like Harvard. You could have heard a pin drop. A boy in the back whispered too loudly, wait, what? I leaned in, toward the mic. I was told my name would confuse the admissions board, that my voice wouldn't fit in lecture halls, that my story wouldn't matter. A ripple moved through the room. I swallowed hard and let the words come. But here I stand. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I never let them decide who I was to begin with. A murmur of agreement, a few claps. My story isn't just grades and test scores. My story is walking into classrooms where no one looked like me, and still choosing to raise my hand. A teacher in the front shifted in her seat. My story is being followed around the library like I didn't belong there. My story is hearing my own guidance counselor ask, are you sure you don't want to apply to a community college instead? A few shocked faces turned toward the back of the room. I paused. My voice caught just for a second. I'm here. Because my mother cleaned homes she was never invited to live in. Because my grandfather marched when it wasn't safe to march. Because generations before me built bridges they never got to cross. I looked at my mom again. Her hand covered. Her mouth. My mom always told me, baby, they'll try to shrink you so they can breathe easier. Don't let them. Someone stood up. Then another. My story is more than my skin. It's about showing up even when every system said, you don't belong here. A clap echoed. Then a wave of applause. But I wasn't done. This speech isn't just for me. It's for every student who was underestimated before they even spoke. For every kid who sat in the back, silent, not because they didn't know the answer, but because they didn't feel like they were allowed to speak. A girl in the front row cried openly. It's for the ones told to be realistic, to stay small, to stop dreaming too loud. I felt a strength I hadn't before. I am not an exception. I am the result of every door kicked open before me. I am the proof that we belong, not just in classrooms, but on stages. Not just in attendance, but in leadership. The crowd stood. I stepped back from the mic, breath shaking, heart full. The applause didn't stop. My mom rushed up, grabbing my hand, whispering, "That's my baby." And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing in spite of anything. I was standing because I was ready to take my place. The boxes felt heavier than they were. Maybe it was the weight of everything I carried inside me, the expectations, the scars, the voice in my head that used to whisper, "You don't belong here." I took a breath and pushed open the door to my dorm room. A tall white kid was already inside. Unpacking a guitar, he turned, eyebrows raised. "You're Elijah?" I nodded. Little guarded. Then he broke into a wide grin. "Dude, you're the guy who shut down that racist interviewer, right?" I blinked. "I guess that's one way to put it." He laughed, reaching out to shake my hand. "That was legendary, man." I watched the clip like 5 times. "I'm Josh." I shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." "I'm just the guy who didn't stay silent." "Exactly. That's what made it powerful." His words surprised me. No awkwardness. No weird comments about how articulate I was. Just respect. As we unpacked in silence, I glanced around the room. 2 beds, 2 desks, posters still rolled in my suitcase. This space would be my start? My blank slate. I looked at the window. Harvard Yard stretched beyond it, trees swaying gently in the evening light. For a moment, I let myself feel it. The quiet satisfaction. The fight to get here wasn't easy, but I was here. And I wasn't hiding. That night, I walked alone, through campus. No particular direction, just letting my thoughts settle. My shoes crunched over the gravel paths. The buildings around me loomed like monuments. I had seen them in brochures, but standing here it felt different. It felt earned. As I passed a small group sitting on the steps, someone called out, "Hey, you Elijah Moore?" I turned, heart skipping. A beat. A black girl stood, eyes wide but kind. "You changed something," she said softly. The others nodded. No applause, no fanfare. Just quiet understanding. I smiled, walking closer. "You can too," I whispered. She looked like she might cry. We didn't say anything else. I kept walking. In the distance. The yard glowed under warm yellow lights. Breeze passed through the trees like a whisper of everything I'd been through. I used to think that justice came in grand moments. Now I knew sometimes it was in the stillness after, in the way people looked at you, in the stories they told because you told yours first. I closed my eyes and let it sink in. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The auditorium lights dimmed slightly as I took my seat on stage. My palms were damp, but my heart was steady. Dean Banks sat to my left. She glanced over, nodded once. A silent gesture, but it held more than any speech could. The moderator leaned into his mic. Our final question for today's panel on bias in admissions. What changed Harvard the most this year? Dean Banks turned her head slowly toward the crowd, then toward me. "Elijah Moore," she said, clear and unshaken. Not because of what he suffered, but how he answered it. I didn't move. I just let the silence wrap itself around the room. I felt every heartbeat of that moment. Every seat filled, every eye on me. Not in judgment this time, but in acknowledgement, a far cry from the whispers, the side glances, the clenched jaws from months ago. Dean Banks continued. "There's something about truth told without apology. Elijah didn't demand attention. He forced accountability." Her words landed heavier than any policy I could have read. I shifted in my chair, gripping the microphone in front of me. "I didn't set out to be the face of anything," I said. "I just couldn't stay quiet anymore." Someone in the front row nodded slowly, their eyes wet. I remember sitting in that admissions office, I said, knowing I belonged here, but being told without words that I didn't. I let that sit. I remember walking out thinking, if I say something, they'll think I'm angry. If I don't, they'll think they were right. I paused, inhaled deeply. But I spoke, not to fight, just to be heard. The moderator leaned forward. What gave you the strength? My mother's hands, I said. Working jobs. Nobody thanked her for. My sister's voice trembling the first time she was called a slur, and me tired of swallowing things that were never meant for me to carry. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd. No claps, just breath. Stillness. Then. I smiled. Funny thing is, when I finally raised my voice, I didn't know if anyone would listen. Turns out silence was louder. Dean Banks chuckled softly beside me. I looked around. Professors, students, admin, faces that once avoided mine now looked directly at me. I don't want to be remembered for what I survived, I said slowly. I want to be remembered for what I refuse to accept. A hand rose in the back, a student, young, brown-skinned, nervous. I'm applying next year, she said. I'm scared it won't matter, that nothing changed. I looked straight at her. It changed. How? Do you know? I pointed to the seat beside me. Because this was never supposed to be my seat, but here I am. The crowd went quiet again, and then applause, not thunderous. Not wild. But real. Earned. Air. After the session ended, I stood outside the auditorium under a gray sky. Dean Banks stepped beside me. You don't need a podium to change things, Elijah. Sometimes just not backing down is enough. I nodded. It's not just about me anymore. No, it's not, she said. A breeze carried the last of fall's leaves across the stone path. I watched them scatter. I turned back toward the doors, paused, then looked over my shoulder. Sometimes, I said to no one in particular, all it takes to break a system is one voice that refuses to be quiet. And this time, I knew. Mine never would be again.